Conversation today begins with a member of the House of Representatives and the Deputy Chairman of the House Committee on Anti-Corruption, Honorable Dachung Bagus. Honorable, welcome to Politics Today.
Thank you, Terry. Good evening, Nigeria.
So let's get reactions to the recovered loot. I'm sure you got the information yesterday as well. So the concern for many is the National Assembly concerned about the process leading to that agreement, or was Parliament carried along?
Yeah, this has been the tussle between the National Assembly and the Executive, even since the 8th Assembly, where the National Assembly have to put up a committee to look into issues, and with the tussle between the Appropriation Committee and the Executive. And this is my third year in the National Assembly. We have never discussed any of the recovered loots. We just sit down and we hear the Executive recovered loots and allotted the same expenses to various projects that they so deem to defy, that they so desire. But Section 12, subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution as amended clearly states that any agreement or treaty that is being signed on behalf of Nigeria by the Federation needs to be ratified by the National Assembly. So most of these agreements have not been brought to the National Assembly for us to ratify, to see if there are clauses in those agreements that is either that will cause some certain danger or harm to the Nigerians, to the next generation of Nigeria, and what those agreements are all about. Because to us, like the 8th Assembly that really argued some of the recovered loots, because then about $600 million from 2015 to 2019 that was recovered. The Executive channeled it to social intervention program prior to election, sharing for 5,000 naira and so on and so forth. And to us, we believe that as representative of the people, if such amounts of monies will be recovered, we need to look into such amounts of money. Okay, where is it necessary? What is the pressing need of Nigerians that we can channel such funds, and should come through appropriation as well, because if monies are coming in, should go to the Federation account. And if monies go into the Federation account, meaning that before it goes out from the Federation account, it needs to be approved by the National Assembly, not the Executive to just channel that this is what they want to do with the funds. We have pressing needs. Like now, ASUU has been on strike. Government is trying to settle those issues. As a representative of the people, if I have to argue where those funds will be channeled to on the floor, I would say, why can't you channel part of these funds to ASUU so that most of the youths that are at home could go back to school? But some of the issues and some of the areas that we feel that the Executive are channeling those funds are not the immediate needs of Nigerians. Because we believe that when we discuss these issues at the National Assembly, we appropriate those funds according to the needs of Nigerians. It's going to go a long way. Not just Executive will look at it and now allocate and allot it to what they feel it should be, but we as representatives, and the Constitution has given us even that right from Section 12.
I recall that the National Assembly has carried out some investigative hearings into these recovered loots. And I also recall that National Assembly did pass the Proceeds of Crime Bill, even though it doesn't expressly state there that National Assembly should be involved in this. Beyond these agreements, I know that the Attorney General has also said that international agreements cannot be bound by local laws.
Well, see, any law, as it's been passed by the National Assembly, the immediate oversight of such laws, even if we are not part of the oversight whatsoever, the implementation of such laws should be done by the National Assembly. It doesn't mean that because the National Assembly has passed a law and the Executive just expressly use the law without an oversight by the National Assembly. And, well, the 9th National Assembly, we have not even set up a committee to look into the Abacha loot like what happened in the 8th Assembly. But I believe that this is one of the issues that we should be able to look into when we come back from our recess on the 20th of September. Because we cannot allow issues like the students, you cannot allow issues like other economic issues that is really biting hard on Nigerians. And for us to be able to allocate, the executive will now allocate the funds to channels that it's not necessary. So definitely this
is it your opinion that the fund, based on the agreement, beyond the legality or otherwise, from the point of view of National Assembly of this agreement, is it your opinion or that of National Assembly that the decision to allocate these funds to infrastructure needs is flawed?
Absolutely, because the National Assembly wasn't carried along.
Simply because the National
Assembly is not carried along. If we look at, okay, for instance, they are allotted to the Third Niger Bridge. The National Assembly have been allocating funds to the Third Niger Bridge. What has happened to the appropriation of funds by the National Assembly to the Third Niger Bridge? That
second Niger Bridge.
Yeah, no, the second Niger Bridge. What has happened to the allocation of funds that the National Assembly have, that now you want to carry another funds to put into that? The other roads, what has happened to funds? Because these are infrastructural projects that has been in the budget all through seasons. So what has happened to those funds that the National Assembly has allocated funds to? So we believe that when we are being carried along, we look at these issues expressly, we should be able to allocate those funds. And again, especially those treaties that has been signed by the executive, the House need to ratify those treaties very well. If you will remember, the 9th National Assembly have to query some of those loan agreement with China, that we had serious issues from some of those clauses. So these are issues that we need to really sit down, scrutinize, look at those clauses one by one. As it is now, we just know that the agreement was signed.
But this is not the first loot that's been repatriated, and this is not the first time that these monies are being allocated just a second to infrastructure. This similar fund was recovered in 2020. That money was allocated to these 3 projects as well.
Those has been the issue. Some of us from the opposition, we have always talked about this, we have always queried this, and that's why in the 8th Assembly and even us from the opposition, we are querying such agreements as well, because so far the present administration has recovered over 1.2 billion of such funds, and we want to really
recovered.
Yes, they have recovered over 1.2 billion of dollars, not even naira, dollars of such funds. 2015 to 2019, about $620 billion, and between 2019 to date, with the addition of this 23 million. So we want to really look at how has it really impacted on the life of Nigerians from those recoveries.
So how, based on your last statement, how involved is the National Assembly in oversighting these funds? Since,
absolutely,
for example,
absolutely none. Absolutely none.
Who's to blame for that?
We have the treaty. We have the treaty committee in the House. The treaty committee, headed by Right Honorable Osai, supposed to be carried along in the signing of this agreement. Apart from the treaty committee, wheresoever those funds are being allocated to, various committees that have oversight in wheresoever these funds need to be carried along as well. Leadership of the National Assembly needs to be carried along. To my own knowledge, I have not seen the leadership of the National Assembly being involved in any of this, either signing or any of this execution. So these are the appropriation committee of the House needs to be carried along. So these are issues that we welcome the positive development of this repatriation. We like the idea, but execution, because transparency and accountability is very key. As a member of the Anti-Corruption Committee, we need to know how transparent most of these funds that have been recovered, because it now so happened that even in debt, Abacha is so generous to Nigeria. So how, with those generosity, how can we assure that these free money, in quote, do not go back to be looted again by people that don't have effective oversight. Because when monies that are not really looked into without accountability and transparency, then it will be looted back. So that's our fear. Because if we cannot get $1.2 billion over how many years, and the life of Nigerians is still the same.
But how is the National Assembly reconciling all these funds? Because the $1.2 billion, which you allege, is spread across the different anti-graft agencies and as well and the Ministry of Justice as well.
Yeah, well, I will speak for the House officially. I will speak for the House officially. But as a representative, as looking at from my own perspective, knowing that from the opposition party, from the opposition, we have not yet seen, neither carried along, we have not seen debates on the floor on these various funds. So, but I'm sure the House will have an official communication on what is happening and what has happened so far. Motions will come on the floor of the House, and for us to be able to look at these funds effectively. But then, I know that every single member of the House of Representatives is interested in knowing what and how each of these funds is being used, as being recovered from the Abacha.
You know, many would have expected that if the National Assembly felt this way regarding these funds, that by this time, at least, it's not clear whether the funds have arrived, of course not, but what step will the National Assembly take in putting a stop to something like this? Will the National Assembly issue a statement saying that the funds should not be touched until...
The way the National Assembly will usually work on issues like this is through motions and resolutions. And if we looked at these issues effectively, we'll come up with a motion and pass a resolution on by all the members for us to be able to look at these funds effectively. And I know that the leadership of the House is that leadership that have a listening ears to the yearning of Nigerians for us to be able to look at these funds effectively. So definitely, with the resolution of the House, with the agreement of the leadership, we should be able to look at these funds, because we have a lot of areas that Nigerians need to understand this issue, because we don't want at the die minute of any administration, these funds should be channeled to election, because it's election period. If you remember, in 2018, that was when the 5,000 Naira social intervention program kickstart, and it was through the Abacha's loot. So now, yes, that it has gone through infrastructural constructions and the rest. Let it not be that is now going to be funds paid, but projects not completed.
When you talk about the National Assembly being carried along in on the issue of the recovered loots, it's almost impossible that the agencies, the recovery agencies, would inform the entire parliament. But that's why you have committees. For example, you're the deputy chairman of the House Committee on Anti-Corruption.
Yeah.
So in your in relating with the anti-graft agencies, do you not get carried along in issues like this? What sort of questions do you ask to make you feel this left out?
Well, with what is happening now, it's a question that we will definitely ask, because as the Anti-Corruption Committee, in as much as we oversight the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, definitely we know what is going on there, issues that have risen from petitions and other suggestives, areas that things are not clearly spelled out. Definitely we will look into such. But again, like I said, most of the investigative activities of the National Assembly come through motion and resolution. So these are issues that we will table on the floor by the grace of God to see that the leadership look into these issues. But again, it's not about witch hunting, but it's about ensuring transparency and accountability in the entire Abacha loot.
Let me draw your attention to the Proceeds of Crime Bill, which was passed by the National Assembly. 2% of the monies recovered, according to that bill, should go to the anti-graft agencies. Now, how are you concerned about the utilization of those funds in relation to that 2%? Because it doesn't seem as though that's going to be implemented. And would you see this gaining ground eventually if this bill goes to the president?
Yeah, well, to me, it's a very big incentive to the anti-corruption agencies because, look, if we want to talk about anti-corruption, we want to talk about a fight against corruption, where an anti-corruption agency that goes on investigation every day and again has to be funded every single investigation. And for instance, ICPC, its own overhead at times, even before now, 100 million for investigation from January to December. Now it's a little bit up. Staff's welfare and salary is very key and important. If someone is fighting and is facing most of those temptations in investigation and so on and so forth, is not well fed, and you tell him to just... So those incentives will be able to boost the morale of the staff, and welfare of the staff should be able to be well packaged in the sense that when they are being tempted, they will look away because they know that they are being well taken care of. And when the anti-corruption agencies are well funded, they have operational vehicles, they can go anywhere at any time. I know ICPC then, as of even 2010, was using a 406 that started the operation, not just until now that they have new vehicles, but anti-corruption agencies, you look how poorly funded they are, that if they need to follow up any victim, they need to follow up any investigation, they don't have the equipments. Forensic, as of then, zero. A lot of issues. So the anti-corruption agencies need serious funding to be able to fight corruption. No even life insurance to some of the operatives. If an operative died today, that is just it. So when you are putting out your life on the line of duty, you should know that even if when you are not around, your family will well be taken care of. You'll be celebrated as a hero. But when nothing is there, your salary is nothing to write home about, just like the civil service salary. You will say, well, how will I die for a country that does not take care of me? So those are each areas that we have been able to look at. How can we get some of these incentives?
Just before we leave this particular topic, another issue of concern is the synergy or possibly a particular agency that should be responsible for attending to these recoveries, that they should all be domiciled in one area, so you don't have different agencies and then the Ministry of Justice making recoveries that can be accounted for. How's the National Assembly?
The recent bills, we have the Asset Recovery Act as well, which was part of the bills that was assented to. Yes, well, for asset recovery, for now, it has been domiciled with agencies that are responsible for the recovery for now as it is.
But this has been the proceeds of crime.
Yeah, but looking forward, we are looking at how can we be able to centralize all this? How can we be able to? But these are issues that on daily basis, you look at how you can amend the law. You look at areas that you can be able to put things together. And again, with the low funding of agencies, we, as National Assembly, we are looking at the establishment of agencies day in, day out. When government could not and does not have funds at the same time to fund those agencies. Because yes, it's good to establish another agency to be able to recover and to put all the assets together. But how well will those agencies be funded? So that's why on the law, we allow the agencies responsible for the recovery to be able to hold on to those assets for now.
Let me quickly ask you this question before we go on our first break. The EFCC opposes the creation of Electoral Offences Commission. as against what INEC thinks is viable. Where do you stand on this? AFCC says that the law already provides the penalties for something like that. There are laws that already exist to take care of electoral offenses. No need for that.
You see, I support the Electoral Offences Act in the sense that, one, with the justice system that we have, once we have a certain body that immediately could be able to look into any electoral offense, it will go a long way. Most of the justice cases and the justice system as it is now takes many, many years. And now that technology has come into play in Nigerian election, one of the biggest challenge that we are going to have from 2023 election is vote buying, because elections will be transmitted from the polling unit. Once it's transmitted from the polling unit, that is all. You won't have the ballot snatching on the way from point A to point B or from point B to point C. So the highest rate, the major issue that we're going to face in 2023 election ongoing is vote buying. So, but if we don't have a law that immediately will prosecute those issues as it is, just like you have code of conduct, case tribunal handle those issues immediately.
Okay.
So having such laws and such a tribunal immediately will be able to address such. But through the EFCC, well, the EFCC is handling that most of. Before you finish this, and again, they have a lot of cases on their hands. So we feel that having such will be able to address the issue of vote buying and other offenses before even the next cycle of election. And mind you, we have off-season elections.
Absolutely.
In between.
Honorable Dachung Bagos, thank you very much for your time.